website. I can now kind of half see you. Okay, we're live.
Oh, you mean while I was starting the call, you could see me?
I could kind of, through a sort of a haze. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Excellent. Hey, everyone. It's October 17th, 2024. Sorry for missing last week. I was really, really quite ill, but feeling a lot better now. So hopefully I won't have any coughing spells. Richard can take over if I do.
Well, if you don't, I will. I've got a cold as well. I'm nowhere near as bad as you. I know.
We're a mess.
I think. Well, we had this Saharan dust storm come in. Mm-hmm. I reckon that brought a bunch of disease with it too.
Could have, yeah. It's weird here because that happens. Well, the first few years I was here, I didn't notice it at all. But last few years, it seems like every year you wake up, you go outside, and everything's kind of orangey, yellow, haze, and it's what's happening? Is it the apocalypse? What's going on? And, no, just about the Sahara sand blowing over and causing us all kinds of respiratory issues. Okay. Hey, it's been quite a week. So, our last episode, we talked about Uptober, and that was, the first week of October. And I think you made a comment like, oh, it's not working out. And I was like, hang on. We still got a lot of time. And you know what? October did happen. And we've had a lot of strength, and we're still strong with a little bit of a pullback right now. We'll take a look at that in a minute, but it's interesting. And we'll also take a look at the ETF inflows. They've been very strong. There's a lot of interesting things out there. And, Bitcoin, I think we've made this comment a few times that it damn near has to be one of the toughest assets to trade, because if you're a market technician, and when I bring up the silly charts, I'm just looking at some pretty basic support and resistance. I'm not using any Fibonacci's. I'm not looking at EMAs. I'm not going technical. I think most guys get blown away with the technicals because it's just an erratic load of chaos. And so people get frustrated and they say, well, what do I follow? How do I know when to go long or when to go short or when to hold? Or, there's never any clear answer, of course. But I think in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about that. And it might help people a little bit more in terms of not panicking and just kind of saying, okay, hang on, this is normal. So let me bring up the, actually, you know what I'll do? Let's just take a look at Bitcoin first, inflows, and then we'll go on to the subject, just because I don't want to have to break up the slide presentation. So let me go ahead and bring up my trading view, because I'd rather look at trading view, and I'll share my screen. Can you see this?
Yes.
Oh, look at this. Look, I happen to have the S&P up right now. Look at this. That's crazy. So this is the move up in Bitcoin. That pullback, everybody expected. It's right back up. I mean, let's look at the 4-hour chart. I mean, geez, Louise, Papa Cheese. It's just crazy. And when we're looking at gold super strong. Oil, yeah, I need that thing to get up. But even silver, showing some strength. But anyways, back to the Bitcoin silly chart. Hey, we hung up in this area, which is what I said would happen. And I think the day before it went up, it was kind of pressing up here. I said, well, if it goes, we're going to 68. And sure enough, we went up to, I think 60. Did we get up to 69 or pretty close? Anyways, I'm going to go back to the 1-hour chart. So it was pretty good. And of course, we expect it to hit its head around here. That would be perfectly normal. And then beyond there, that's all-time high level. So we're so close to all-time highs that, let's just imagine that, we go up and we hang out here for a while. It starts threatening. Well, if it busts, get out of the way of the freight train. There could be a wick through and back down and some nonsense. Sure, but it wants to go. Do not be selling 75,000 calls, in my opinion, or 76,000 calls, in my opinion, unless it's a huge move and maybe it's the next day. I don't know. If you're into selling short-term calls, fine. I would just stay away from that freight train. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to go straight to 150,000. That would take an enormous amount of capital. There's going to be pullbacks and all kinds of opportunities to sell calls. But on that initial breakup on this strength, I wouldn't be surprised to see it, punch 80. that then maybe starts, stepping in and looking to sell. But
is only 6% above all-time highs. It's not like a huge step.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Just quickly look at the ETF inflows. This was the big day up that we had. It was almost 9,000 Bitcoin. The next day was strong. Yesterday was strong. It's the 16th here. Some pretty heavy and look green across the board, except for Grayscale, but that's normal.
Big chunks going into BlackRock.
Yeah.
That does beg the question in my mind whether some of that is the pent-up shares that they bought from the funds to prevent outflows earlier. In my little conspiracy theory mind,
Yeah. And we did see Grayscale have some inflow days too.
That's unusual, right?
Yeah, it is a little bit unusual.
But I think that I have a feeling. We had a big spike, a wick up yesterday, didn't we? Well, yesterday or the day before, I forget now.
Day before, yeah.
Day before yesterday, and that caused my vol books to take a small hit in vols. But I wonder whether somebody was caught shorting something like the ETFs, or being forced to liquidate in some way. Because it just felt it could have been a fat finger, or or it could have been a forced liquidation on Wall Street, right? Because it happened in Wall Street hours and near the beginning of the market and all that.
Yeah. I don't know. Excuse me. I don't even really remember seeing articles coming out afterwards saying this is, definitively this. It just seemed to be a combination of things which caused it. But here, let me get out of this, and we'll jump into the slides here, and we can start talking about today's topics. Let me just bring up slides here. Excuse me. All right. So what are we talking about today? Well, today is, is Bitcoin really a safe haven asset? And what really drives its price? The talk has always been for years that it's digital gold, and hey, it's a safe haven. And but looking at people's P&Ls and equity and trying to trade it, 30% drawdowns. I mean, doesn't seem like too safe of a haven sometimes. So let's take a closer look at this. So here's gold versus the US dollar. And this is a few weeks back on that the imminent Iran attack on Israel. So it hadn't happened yet, but we were signaled that it was going to happen. And look what happened. Bitcoin down, gold strong. So Bitcoin is behaving like a risk asset. And if it really was digital gold, we'd expect its price to rise. Maybe not every time on a geopolitical event, but most geopolitical events or turmoil. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. But what if we look back in the past and say, okay, well, on that same, so this is the same day as this, when there's this imminent attack going to happen. Here's the S&P. Okay, that's normal. We'd expect the S&P to get a bit of a beat down. Hey, there's going to be a war. That's always kind of the knee jerk. Okay, fine. Last October, early October, there was that attack against Israel. What happened? Well, here's gold. Here's Bitcoin. Again, this is a total risk asset. There's nothing safe haven-y about this. So if we do want to find some correlation, look at this. The NASDAQ 100, which is a very tech-heavy index, very, very tech-heavy. And Bitcoin almost, it's got a very, very strong correlation. All right. So it's behaving like a speculative risk asset. Now, if we take a look a little bit deeper, there's a guy over at Bitcoin Magazine, Vivek. He pointed out in an article that Bitcoin is an expression of the government's expansionist monetary policy, and its price follows global liquidity. And here's the XBT, the token, the Bitcoin token, the Bitcoin
price
ETF. Yeah. And this is, when we're talking about global liquidity here, we're talking about the M2 money supply. And when we compare it to all these other assets, we've got Bitcoin, got the S&P, VT, gold, we've got all these other measures over a 12-month period, Bitcoin is following that global liquidity 83% of the time. So it's not a perfect correlation, but it's pretty damn close. There's always going to be, differences. There's always going to be, this time it's a little bit different because of this, or maybe there's liquidity issues in Bitcoin and it does something you don't expect it to. Fine, but a lot of people seem to think that global liquidity is set to soar, to absolutely take off. And that could really lead to a very serious potential bull run in Bitcoin. And I would have to agree. Now, the one thing I didn't put in this slide presentation that we've talked about before is FX outflows from China. And we've talked about that before. With every time there's big outflows, boom, Bitcoin took a big move up. And I kind of wish I had the time to put something together to maybe do a comparison of when those outflows are happening from China. But I think that sort of sets the stage for people where I was saying earlier, it's bloody hard to trade. And, oh, my God, it's down 20%. Is it going to go down to another 20%? And at least this kind of gives you something to follow, something to put a rule of thumb on, and that global liquidity makes a lot of sense. And also the not really being true digital gold is a really valid point, because that argument is always made. So I don't know, let's sort of explore that a little bit, the digital gold side, and then maybe following the global liquidity.
I mean, what you're kind of saying is that Bitcoin does behave like gold in the sense that it tracks essentially inflation, but it has big pullbacks on risk, which gold does not. Gold has rallies on risk.
Big pullbacks, yeah.
And it's an interesting question, actually, as to whether you'd make more money. And I say more money because money is always being devalued, but whether you'd make more money by a leveraged play on gold as opposed to a less leveraged play on Bitcoin. That'd be an interesting analysis to do. Of course, you wouldn't make any more spending power. You would just preserve spending power. It's all, in the end, it's a zero-sum game in terms of purchasing power, right?
I remember in my younger years when I started to learn about the markets in the 1990s, and I had a mentor or two, and then I started working at brokerages. There was always people who I came across who were gold bugs, who were always, oh, gold, it's going to be the savior. And man, for decades, those people had to eat crow, and they would leverage themselves. They would, a lot of them were futures traders. And, it did have its spikes. It did have its moments, but it never returned what they were expected to return. There's a lot of different reasons for that. Right. But now, are you saying it's different?
Well, international settlements stopped happening in gold for a long time, and they started happening in dollars. So dollars became more immediately valued. They had more utility value than a bar of gold to everyone in the world, even the Russians, right? Even during the Cold War. But now the US has sort of demonstrated its inability to handle its affairs to such a degree, and it's also demonstrated that it will steal other nations' assets for right or wrong reasons is irrelevant. And so the US is no longer seen as a safe banker for the world's currency, which means people are now willing to consider other means of settlement. So, and by people, I mean everyone from governments to oil companies to individuals. So individuals tend to still transact in dollar-denominated assets such as USDT if they're not going to use dollars. So they're still driving demand for dollars for now. But if you're going to do an oil deal between China and Saudi, for example, and you're China, you don't really want to be having to go and buy dollars to buy your oil. So you're going to offer renminbi to Saudi Arabia. Why would they accept it? Because you're going to offer to invest in infrastructure, and you're going to offer to give them naval support to support their oil industry because the US has stopped doing that. And does Saudi really trust China to manage money? Not really. So they're going to make up the difference in gold, aren't they? Right? So gold is sort of coming back as a settlement medium.
What's old is new again.
Yeah. And I think the argument I hear a lot from Bitcoin files Don't get me wrong, that's not pejorative. I think there's a great value for Bitcoin. Is that Bitcoin is a better settlement currency than gold because you don't have to move it in a ship. And I argue that that's fine, but no central bank on earth is ever going to accept Bitcoin as their primary source of backing for their currency, ever. Right? That's ridiculous. The reason for that is that, I mean, oil is bad enough in terms of causing conflict. Access to gold mines is bad enough in terms of causing conflict. You make the global currency reserve Bitcoin, you're going to have ultra conflict over who gets to mine it, and therefore who gets to control the network. And that infrastructure is way too easy to attack. So can't happen.
I think that if we're ever at a point where talking about the reserve currency and being something digital, I think that we'll have evolved past Bitcoin at that point.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I think it has to be something difficult to get that's physical and will beside whatever poor bastard is living on top of that thing. So anyone who's ever lived on top of oil or gold, knows all about colonialism or invasion or whatever you want to call it, right? Business with strangers. You don't want to be anywhere near the thing that's backing the global reserve currency.
They're coming to get you. That's why we're so happy living here in Andorra, because Andorra has nothing.
Nothing, absolutely nothing.
It's got two roads and some mountains, and nobody needs it, so we're pretty safe.
And the shape of the mountains around my valley is a natural nuclear blast shield. So
there you go. Yes. Hunker down for a long nuclear winter. All right. Okay.
It'll be great, right?
Yeah. It'll have a lot of board games and just read a few books.
Who gets to be eaten competitions?
Yeah. So global liquidity, the expectation that there's going to be more liquidity just flooding into the market. Do you agree with that?
I kind of do, certainly around the election, but I do wonder. There's a hidden war going on, in my view, between the US and China, and Russia is involved too. And I was saying, if you can hear my dog vomiting in the background, I apologize. I was looking at Russian bond yields recently, and I think I was talking with you about it, or another friend, and Russian bond yields are 16% currently, and that makes it an attractive yield. I mean, the ruble is dog shit. Don't get me wrong, but earning 16% on dog shit, maybe it's not such dog shit, right? And Russia are sitting on all the minerals on Earth, and they do have enough nuclear weapons to stop people coming to get them. So I wouldn't count Russia as down and out in terms of being an international player right now, in terms of the financial markets. China certainly has an interest in weaning itself off dollar dependency. Unfortunately, it still has a massive dependency on American consumerism to maintain its economy and stop its own people rioting and devouring the government. And the US has this problem of massive debt production. And I think it goes one or two ways after the elections, and whether it's a month after the elections or a decade after the elections. But either the nation states go to war to figure out who's going to run the financial world going forward, or they have this sort of entente cordiale where they're basically fighting skirmishes, and they'll be fighting fiscal wars between each other, and that will involve increasing liquidity, decreasing liquidity, rug pulling everybody. And so I think what I see is volatility, to be short.
And as traders, that's a good thing.
Well, as long as you're not too heavily leveraged and you keep some powder dry, and you need to understand what your end game currency is going to be, right? Where are you going to have your villa and retire to, and what nationality is the maintenance crew of your boat, because you're going to have to pay them in something. And so you need to figure out kind of who's going to win or who's not going to lose, right? And for me, and gold is a super long-term proxy for that, because that buys me a farm in any country on earth. at any time in history. And Bitcoin is a short-term proxy because it's much more movable and easy to fungible than, but a bit more volatile, right? So happy to keep 90% of my money in gold and 10% in Bitcoin because Bitcoin's easier.
Geez, I just had a weird flash of the future of total Armageddon and me having to work on your damn farm or something.
Yeah, I don't think it gets that bad.
Surf.
No one wants that.
No, of course not.
No.
Well, as always, there's interesting times and unexpected events, but I agree with what you're saying. Whether it's kinetic war or this background, as you say, rug pulling financial things, which goes on now anyways to some degree, but whether it accelerates, who knows?
I've been reading that the Fed and the Bank of Japan are in constant conspiration to control the price of oil. Mm. There's a great newsletter on X, which I forget, but the guy he has code names for everything, and he calls oil the spice. And
watch Dune or something.
Yeah, exactly. He controls the spice, controls the world, right?
Yeah.
And
well, I'm still long my oil trade for those people who are following me. I got out of a lot of it on that last spike, but I'd like to have it get up over $80 a barrel. And we're in on the edge of that happening. I know I did read a couple of articles over the last week or so where Israel signaled to the U.S. that it wouldn't be targeting oil or nuclear, and then they said no, that's not true, and it was up and down, and who knows? But it's going to be imminent, and they said they're going to attack before the election, so who knows?
Okay, interesting. Some nice vol. So I've just seen on the Rage Intel Telegram site that Russian Deputy Foreign Minister has said, "We warn Israel against even thinking about striking Iranian nuclear facilities." So maybe it all kicks off between Israel and Russia. Isn't it?
I don't think so, but who knows? Hey, we're coming near the end here. Any last comments you want to make, Richard, about this liquidity and Bitcoin price action? I'm
really heartened that you came to this conclusion by yourself, and we actually didn't collaborate on this document, and it absolutely mirrors my thoughts on the issue. I've always seen cryptocurrency as just a high beta bet on essentially global liquidity, and as you say, therefore the Nasdaq. I'd have said the S&P, but actually you're right. The Nasdaq's a better proxy because tech nerds in the Nasdaq and tech nerds in Bitcoin, right? So it's the same market.
Yeah, cool.
So we should probably be doing some kind of long short trade on that rather than just being long everything. Come to think of it,
Well, the Nasdaq 100 is a favorite for a lot of traders to trade. Because it doesn't go crazy, but it has some good volatility. But we'll talk about that another time. There's some comments here. Yes, and I didn't say hello. Giandrea, Vladimir, Paul, Cor, a lot of the regulars here. That's great. Yes, thank you. It's good to be back. Feeling better. Vladimir said that what happened yesterday was because news posted information that Trump overcomes Kamala. Yep, that's true. He just seems to be pulling away. So if the Democrats are going to win that, they're going to have to cheat extra hard. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I think Brenko liked your comment about Andorra, your valley being a natural nuclear blast shield. Yeah, good stuff.
Right, these are important considerations. Always consider the long tail, right? Yeah, because it's
there. You go.
You can always recover from short-term volatility events, but you can't recover from the long tail.
Yeah, and read the Black Swan. Vladimir also says he's referring to Russia. Soon their bond income will be over 20%. He says he's watching closely what's going on in Russia.
That's fascinating, right? That's an interesting play.
Yeah. Vladimir says news coming in 5 minutes. We'll see some movement right now. You're not talking about the ECB rate cuts, are you? I don't know what you're talking about there, Vladimir, but
yeah.
I'm not sure.
I don't even watch that stuff and that nonsense anymore. I think they're so discredited that I don't care what they say.
Yeah. Another question here from Vladimir. How would you suggest to convert front spread with calls, which become really close in the money and still a lot of time left before expiry?
I've been doing some housekeeping on some of my accounts over the past couple of days. So we had vols in the short weeks, 1 and 2 weeks, creeping down to sort of 44, 42-ish. And we had vols out at 1 month, still up at sort of 55, 57. So actually, I just took a decision to make a vol play and buy the short-dated and sell the longer-dated with a wider strangle, because that just seemed to make sense to me. And that vol cliff in the vol surface is all because of the election, and I'm betting, like I always do, that it's overdone.
Yeah. And to that point, there's yesterday I made some adjustments on some accounts where I had some in the money calls, and that vol wall November 1 and November 8th was just too tempting to not sell. So I moved some there, and
if I'm wrong, if we're wrong at 60 vol or 65 vol, like 20 delta strangles on that, fine. I'm happy to roll that. I'll roll 60 vol into 80 vol any day of the week.
Yeah, because it's never going to last. And, and I was thinking about it. Well, there could be some things around the election. More so if Trump wins, I expect a lot of violence from leftists. I expect a lot of looting and burning and shit like that. And, there could be, some legal challenges and who knows what they're going to come up with. But I expect that. And that could cause a vol spike, which might put those dates under pressure. But I don't think it would last very long, a week or two, a few days, maybe a month, but then it'll tail off, I think.
Now you mentioned that, I think you're absolutely right. The left in the US is actually insane and violent and insane, and definitely will pull something, and actually might even try to kill Trump again. And whether Trump's a good president or not is not the agenda here. I don't. It's not my fight even. I'm not American. But I think if Trump did get shot and killed, then you could expect to see Bitcoin down to 50K. Maybe less, 40. So protecting the long tail on the downside. I know everyone's worried about the big green candle because they're going to print all the money, but actually my guts and my experience tells me no, the risk is always on the downside. So I'm happy to be short calls and long puts. Happy right now.
Yeah, and for those people looking to maybe pick up some downside protection, and it's not going to get cheaper. We've had a nice move up. Puts are cheap relatively. And now if you're going to buy positive. November 8th, it's a bit more expensive. But maybe by end of November.
The skews are all positive for the first time in a month. So if you're going to buy puts and sell calls, now is my view. Now isn't a bad time.
Again, not trading advice, not financial advice, but it's always good to, when everybody's going one way, buy the protection on the other side, and you usually live to appreciate it. Vladimir says, as usual, when we're close to breaking a level, Bitcoin around 70K right now, it's a good idea to buy puts. Yeah, absolutely. And when things are screaming down, or it's good to buy calls. They're on sale, and a lot of times they'll go out worthlessly, but
there is no greater force in finance than mean reversion.
Yeah, and I really mean it. Okay, well, we're at the bottom of the hour. Excuse me. If there's any last questions, let's get them in now. Otherwise, we'll shut her down. And we're at 67,000 right now, Bitcoin. So we're just $1,000 off our highs of yesterday, basically. We're within a stone's throw of those all-time highs, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if Saturday we're at 65 or 66. Have a bit of a pullback, a bit of a rest. Wouldn't surprise me in the least. But it also wouldn't surprise me if we did push up into the 70s and scare the pants off people.
By the weekend? No, not a chance.
Well, I'm just saying, well, why not? Why not? Sure. Did you say not a chance? Are you trying to tempt the gods of the market?
I'm making my bet with you here. No way. I think we're at 66, 65 and a half by Monday.
Well, the pullback is the more probable thing to happen. But sometimes the markets don't care about probability.
It's fair.
So after such a move, let's face it, we were at 59,000. We were at $10,000 lower last week.
Yeah.
that's that's quite a move. So to have it take a rest and maybe have a bit of pullback, perfectly normal. I think even on some of my long-oriented accounts, I am now slightly delta negative, just because you're rolling and adjusting, and as things keep moving in one direction, the delta slides. So I'm quite happy to be a little bit negative right now. I'm thinking we're probably going to pull back to mid-60s.
Yeah, I'm just working with my prop books to be delta neutral at this stage. I've been delta positive for the past month and a half, and happy to just let me delta neutral here and let pick up the decay and evolve from here until after the election, I think.
Yeah. One last comment here. Vladimir says he's been shorting since 66.
Whoa. Okay. Might be a fair move, right?
Well, I've got 66,000 short calls happening, and I'm not too worried about them. If I have to adjust them, I have to adjust them. But I like it, just like when it's down in the high 50s, being short puts. It kind of looks scary at the moment, but Bitcoin's going to be Bitcoin. And
but but the case in point, right? Because of the vols, if you're short the 66 expiring tomorrow calls. You could roll them now to the 75,000 calls on the 8th of November at a profit. You make a credit.
That's amazing. You can pick up like $10,000 worth of strike.
Yeah.
What a differential.
I mean, why the hell wouldn't you, right?
Yeah.
Screw the theta. Just take the trade. Because with those vols crush, you're gonna just get paid overnight.
Excellent.
Again, that wasn't a guarantee, by the way. It might happen.
That's right. Could happen. Always a risk. All right. Well, I think that's it for the comments. So again, thanks everyone for hanging out with us. You can always check us out at roguetrader.academy and check out our live streams and hang out each day. But until then, let's see what happens this week. We'll meet again next Thursday, and I got a funny feeling. We're going to be in for some action between now and then. So I'm looking forward to seeing where we're at and discussing our next moves. All right. Catch you later, everyone.
Bye.